Tonight, the story opens like the hush that settles after rain, when droplets cling to the leaves outside and the air feels washed clean. A soft lantern glow lingers near a wooden threshold, and the listener, restless, perhaps weary from a day of carrying too much, finds themselves guided here. The voice that greets them is warm and unhurried, reminding them that there is a gentler way to be with the world. If your mind has been running in circles, chasing approval, smoothing every rough edge for others, tonight is an invitation to step into a quieter rhythm. The rustle of trees outside the window becomes nature's lullaby, doesn't it? And in that sound, you might sense that calm isn't far away. It is already here, waiting, like the lantern at the door. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you'd like, post your location and local time in the comments so we can see how many corners of the world gather under this same quiet sky. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey together. The lantern's glow spreads as the story flows forward. Imagine a small monastery on the edge of a village. Travelers arrive, not always seeking enlightenment, sometimes only a warm meal or a kind smile. The monks here learn early how to balance kindness with their own energy. They bow, they share, but they also know when the bowl is empty. That too is compassion. One teaching says, "Compassion without boundaries burns out like a flame in wind." It's tempting to give endlessly, hoping for love or peace, but real kindness respects both giver and receiver. A monk once said, "To feed another, you must still have rice in your own bowl." The words ripple through the night like a temple bell. Some Zen traditions practice this through the simplest of rituals. When a monk eats, the bowl is filled only to the rim, not overflowing. They bow to the server, grateful, but they don't pretend they can take more than they can finish. It's a quiet lesson in knowing limits without apology. The practice is so ordinary that it can be overlooked, yet it holds a truth that follows one into every relationship. Without edges, the bowl cannot hold anything at all. The mind, too, learns edges. When thoughts race with people-pleasing, saying yes too quickly, bending too far, one can pause and imagine the lantern at the threshold. It lights the space, but it doesn't chase shadows beyond the gate. Its gift is steady, and it trusts the night to be what it is. Could you be like that lantern, shining warmth without stretching yourself thin? There is an old story of Ryokan, the wandering poet-monk. A thief once crept into his hut, only to find almost nothing there. Ryokan returned, saw the man, and quietly removed his robe, offering it as well. "If only I could give him the moon," he whispered. The thief left puzzled, clutching cloth. Some read this tale as self-erasure, but others see a playful boundary. Ryokan gave freely of what he could spare, but he did not follow the thief, did not surrender his very life to please. He understood that compassion can be light as laughter and still not enslave. The Buddha taught often that clinging fuels suffering. Approval is just another form of clinging, longing for the nod, the smile, the soft pat of recognition. What if you set it down, like Ryokan setting down his robe? Would the world collapse, or would you discover that the lantern still shines, robe or not? Zen masters sometimes ask their students to listen not to answers, but to silence between the questions. So here, as you breathe in and out, feel the edges of your own presence. Notice where you begin and where the world continues. That edge is not cold. It is alive, like skin meeting air. Without it, how could you ever feel the breeze? Perhaps you wonder, if compassion must have limits, does that make it less pure? But boundaries are not walls. They are doors. They open, they close, they guide. In the hush of the night, when the lantern flickers and the trees sigh, can you imagine yourself as both giver and guardian? To release people-pleasing is not to stop caring. It is to care in ways that sustain. The monk with the rice bowl, Ryokan with his robe, the lantern at the threshold, all whisper the same secret. Love is not diminished by edges. It is shaped by them. And as sleep begins to gather, like a soft blanket over your shoulders, this truth rests with you too. The bell sounds at dusk, deep and resonant, rolling through the hills like a wave across a still lake. Its tone reminds the monks and the villagers who hear it that time is always moving, that nothing lasts forever. The bell does not demand applause. It simply rings and fades. Yet notice how its sound touches everything without asking permission. For those who spend their days chasing approval, this image holds a quiet medicine. Praise and blame swirl around like weather. One day, the sky is clear with admiration. The next, clouds of criticism gather. Both are temporary. The bell shows another way. Simply sound your truth. Let the echo travel, and then let it dissolve. There is a story of Ryokan, the gentle monk who was falsely accused of fathering a child. Neighbors pointed, voices rose, and yet Ryokan only bowed his head and replied, "Is that so?" He took the infant into his hut and cared for it without resentment. Months later, when the truth emerged and the parents reclaimed the child, Ryokan again bowed. Is that so? His compassion never meant agreeing with lies, nor did it mean hardening in defense. It was a steady kindness that held its ground without clinging to either blame or praise. The Buddha taught that attachment to reputation is just another form of suffering. To crave constant approval is to tie yourself to a wheel that never stops spinning. Even a small compliment, sweet as it feels, becomes another link in a chain if you believe you cannot live without it. What would happen if you could bow like Ryokan and whisper, "Is that so?" instead of rushing to please or defend? A quirky practice in Zen temples illustrates this spirit. At certain hours, a monk strikes the han, a flat wooden board with measured rhythm before meditation. The sound is hollow, echoing into the courtyard. Painted on the board are the words, "Great matter of birth and death. Impermanence is swift." The han is not played for applause. Few outside the walls even notice. But to those who hear it, the reminder is clear. Time moves. Opinions fade. Do not cling. As you listen tonight, notice how your breath itself is like the bell, like the han. In, out, in, out. Each cycle complete then gone. Breath doesn't beg to be praised for its service, nor does it shrink when unnoticed. It simply continues, loyal, present. Could you imagine living in this way, doing what is true, letting go of the rest? When you think of people-pleasing, picture yourself running after echoes. By the time you catch one, it has already disappeared. The bell does not chase its own sound. It trusts the air to carry it. What would happen if you trusted the world to hold your efforts without demanding endless approval? Of course, the question arises, if we let go of pleasing others, do we risk becoming selfish, cold, or careless? Here the bell offers another insight. It serves all who hear it, but it does not cling to any ear. Its compassion lies in being itself fully, not in bending or breaking to meet every demand. True care shines from authenticity, not performance. Imagine walking down a path at night, hearing the bell echo across the valley. You don't ask it to change its tone to suit your mood. You simply receive the sound as it is. Could you allow others the same chance to meet you as you are, without constant reshaping? As the story drifts onward, the night deepens. The lantern at the threshold still glows, the air cools, and a listener breathes more slowly. In this calm, the teachings land gently. The approval of others is a shifting wind, but compassion rooted in boundaries endures. Like Ryokan's steady bow, like the bell's fading tone, it is possible to care without clinging, to love without losing yourself. The night stretches deeper, and the lantern glow seems to settle closer, like a friend leaning in to whisper. The simple wooden bowl used for temple meals now appears in the story, cradled carefully in both hands. Its rim gleams faintly in the light. Not just a piece of wood, but a quiet teacher in its own right. In monasteries, a meal is not just about eating. The practice of oryoki, of mindful bowls, teaches the balance of generosity and limit. Each monk's bowl is filled, not too much, not too little. When the rim is reached, the server bows, and the monk bows back. This is how kindness honors boundaries. To take more than one can hold is wasteful. To take less, pretending to need nothing, is false humility. But to receive exactly what fits, and to acknowledge it with gratitude, is a form of truth-telling. In ordinary life, people-pleasing often feels like letting the bowl overflow. Someone asks for help, and even if your energy is drained, you nod. Someone hints at disappointment, and you scramble to give more. Soon, the bowl is spilling, and you wonder why resentment seeps in like water across the floor. The bowl reminds us, limits are not failures. They are the shape that makes giving possible. A story is told of Hakuin, a fiery Zen master. When accused of fathering a child, much like Ryokan in the earlier tale, he simply responded, "Is that so?" His refusal to fight or to please, his steadiness, showed how a person can hold firm without cruelty. He cared for the child, yet he did not bend to prove innocence or win back approval. His bowl had edges, and those edges held his compassion steady. The Buddha's teaching on the middle path applies here. Extremes, whether overgiving or shutting down, create imbalance. The middle path is like the rim of the bowl. It defines the shape of compassion without collapsing into excess or neglect. The insight may sound simple, but in practice, it asks us to pause, breathe, and ask, can I truly hold this request right now? A lesser-known Zen custom involves the meal chant. Before eating, monks recite verses about gratitude, the effort of many hands, and the responsibility of using energy wisely. The chant ends with a reminder not to take more than needed, not to give less than honest effort. Even in the silence of eating, this chant lingers like a heartbeat, guiding each spoonful. Could everyday life be lived with such awareness? Could saying no be as natural as stopping at the bowl's rim? As you breathe tonight, picture your own invisible bowl. It rests in your lap, steady and open. Each request from others is like a ladle of rice. Some portions you can hold gladly, with warmth. But when the rim is reached, the bowl speaks for you. The boundary is clear, not harsh, simply part of the design. Imagine the sound of that bowl being set gently on the floor after the meal, a soft click in the still hall. No apology, no performance, just the truth of completion. Could you let your life sound like that, steady and final in its boundaries? Zen masters might ask, what if your bowl had no edges? Would anything remain to nourish you, or would everything slip away before it touched your lips? To care for others requires a container, and that container is the self you honor, not erase. The lantern outside the threshold flickers, as if nodding agreement. The night air stirs, carrying the faint rhythm of a wooden clapper, perhaps a reminder of impermanence. Yet within that impermanence, something steady has been learned. Boundaries are not barriers to compassion. They are the rim that lets kindness be real, sustainable, and alive. The road stretches out, glistening with the soft sheen of recent rain. Two monks walk together, their robes brushing the mud. The elder, Tanzen, moves with steady steps, eyes open to the world around him. The younger, Aikido, keeps his gaze low, repeating his teacher's instructions silently in his head. Ahead, at the bend of the path, a young woman waits, stranded at the edge of a swollen puddle that has turned the dirt track into a small river. She hesitates, unable to cross. Without breaking stride, Tanzan lifts her gently, carries her across, and sets her down on the other side. He nods, then continues walking. The woman bows, gratitude spilling from her lips like water. Aikido, however, stiffens. For hours, he walks in silence, his mind heavy, his brow furrowed. Finally, unable to contain himself, he bursts out, "Brother, we monks are not supposed to touch women. Why did you do that?" Tanzan smiles softly. "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story echoes through the centuries like a lantern's glow stretched across time. It teaches us about burdens, especially the invisible ones we hold when we aim to please everyone, follow every rule, or carry every expectation. Tanzan acted from compassion in the moment. He lifted, carried, released. But Aikido clung to the act, carrying judgment, fear, and imagined failure. Which monk truly broke the spirit of practice? In everyday life, people-pleasing can look a lot like Aikido's burden. You agree to help, then replay the moment endlessly. Did they like me enough? Did I do too much or not enough? The weight clings long after the act is over, like muddy water drying into stiff stains. It keeps you from moving freely. The Buddha once compared clinging to holding on to hot coals with bare hands. You think you're throwing them at someone else, but the burn belongs to you. In the same way, clinging to the need for approval singes the heart long after the act itself has ended. Yet Tanzan's act reminds us that compassion can coexist with release. Boundaries do not always mean refusal. Sometimes they mean letting go when the moment has passed. To help once, fully, without resentment, is cleaner than helping endlessly in your imagination, rehearsing, rehashing, and twisting yourself into knots of performance. A small Zen practice illustrates this beautifully. After meditation, monks bow once, then sweep the floor of the hall. The sweeping is not just for cleanliness, it's for clearing the mind. Each stroke of the broom is a way of setting down what was carried. Dust from the corners, thoughts from the day, approval and disapproval alike. They are brushed away, leaving space open again. Imagine if your own day ended like that, with a broom across the heart, each stroke saying, "It is finished. I release it now." You hear the night wind stirring the trees outside your window, soft, rhythmic, almost like sweeping. Isn't it curious how nature itself is always cleaning, moving, restoring balance witut apology? Leaves fall and rot, rivers flood and recede, winds carry seeds from one place to another. There is no people-pleasing in this work. The world simply renews itself, boundary and compassion interwoven. Reflect for a moment. What would it feel like to live as Tanzen did, acting when moved by real compassion, but not carrying the act once it is done? Could you lift someone briefly, set them down, and then walk on with a light heart? Could you decline the weight of endless replay? The younger monk's mistake was not his caution, but his attachment. He thought virtue was about pleasing rules, not about being present. How often do we do the same, clinging to what we think others expect, rather than noticing what kindness actually requires in the moment? Picture yourself holding a heavy stone. At first, you lift it to help someone, but hours later, long after they've moved on, you're still gripping it tightly, your arms aching, your back sore. That is Aikido's burden. Tanzen, by contrast, lets the stone drop with a smile. His hands are free again, ready for the next moment of life. Tonight, as you breathe, imagine releasing your own stone. Whatever approval you've been chasing, whatever guilt you've been rehearsing, whatever judgment you've been carrying, set it down beside the road. The sound of it falling is soft, like mud sliding back into earth. Your shoulders relax, your steps grow lighter. A Zen master might lean close and ask, "If you've already set her down, why do you still carry her in your mind?" The question lingers, not demanding an answer, but inviting a smile. The lantern at the threshold flickers again, drawing the story forward. Its glow does not chase after approval. It does not seek thanks for its light. It simply shines until the oil is gone, then rests in darkness until it is lit again. Could your life be lived like that? Shining, releasing, shining again? The path through the night is long, but with each step, the heart grows lighter. Boundaries here are not chains. They are the gentle reminder to set things down when the carrying is done. Tanzen's lesson walks with us now, to help when help is needed, and to release when it is time to walk on. The night deepens, and the lantern's glow feels more like moonlight now, softened and steady. On the water's surface, nearby drifts an empty boat, its wooden hull knocking gently against the pier with each ripple. This image, often shared by Zen teachers, is more than a picture. It is a teaching about self, about criticism, and about how we meet the world. Imagine rowing across a lake at dusk. The water is calm, the sky glowing with the last light of day. Suddenly, an empty boat floats into your path, bumping against yours. Annoyance might rise. Why didn't the owner tie it properly? Yet when you realize the boat is empty, your anger melts. There is no one to blame. You simply push it aside and continue. But now imagine that same boat carrying a person. This bump feels personal. They weren't watching. They disrespected me. Anger swells, though the impact is no different than before. The difference lies in the mind that clings to identity, to me and mine. The empty boat shows us the possibility of meeting life without taking every bump as an insult. For those caught in people-pleasing, this parable is vital. Criticism often feels like that second boat, aimed at you, piercing into your sense of worth. Praise feels like sunlight, criticism like storm clouds, and you scramble to adjust your sails to every change in weather. But what if each word, each opinion, were just another empty boat drifting past? Could you let them float by without boarding them? The Buddha taught that the self we cling to is not solid, not fixed. The identity we defend so fiercely is like mist over water, appearing, shifting, vanishing. To please others endlessly is to defend a phantom, a mist. How freeing it would be to see that most of the time, the boat is empty. In Zen practice, some monks literally sit facing a blank wall for hours. At first it seems pointless, even harsh. But over time, they see thoughts arise and drift like boats. A criticism floats in. Bump. A memory of praise. Bump. A demand, a fear, a longing, all boats drifting in and out of awareness. When the monk no longer chases or fights them, the mind begins to quiet, like the lake at dusk. You can try a taste of this now. Close your eyes and picture a boat drifting toward you. Maybe it carries a sharp comment someone made earlier today. Let it bump your boat. Notice the stir of anger, the reflex to explain yourself. And then remember, Perhaps the boat is empty. Perhaps the words are just echoes of that person's own weather, their own storms. You don't have to climb in. The night air is cool, brushing your skin gently. Isn't it remarkable how the body always knows the present, while the mind often lives in past or future? The breeze does not ask for approval. It simply touches, then moves on. You can be like that too, meeting what arrives, letting it pass. A quirky Zen story tells of a monk scolded harshly by his teacher. Instead of shrinking or arguing, the monk bowed deeply and said, "Thank you for your great compassion." Onlookers were puzzled. Wasn't the scolding cruel? But the monk understood. The words were another boat, bumping. He could choose to let them pass without losing his center. What would happen in your own life if you stopped treating every bump as proof of your value? Would you have more space for joy, for rest? Could you save your energy for moments that truly matter, instead of endlessly patching the sails of reputation? The lantern at the threshold glows on, not brighter when praised, not dimmer when ignored. Its purpose is simple: to shine. Likewise, your purpose is not to chase approval, but to live with authenticity. The bumps will come, boats will drift, but you need not climb into each one. Reflect now. When was the last time you felt criticized? Did the words stay with you long after the moment had passed? Did you replay them like Aikido replaying the woman carried by Tanzan? And what if you could treat that criticism like an empty boat? Would the sting fade? Would you move forward more lightly? Zen masters sometimes ask questions without clear answers. Here is one for you. If no one owns the boat, why carry the collision in your heart? The question itself is a lantern. It does not demand, but it lights the possibility of release. The story continues under a darker sky. The lake lies still again, the boat drifting gently away. The sound of insects hums like a hidden choir. The cool air brushes the skin, and the lantern's glow reaches into your quiet room. The teaching settles in. Boundaries are not cold refusals. They are the gentle act of not climbing into every passing boat. Compassion remains, but self-erasure fades. The world can bump against you, and you can smile, push away, and drift on. The lantern burns lower, though its light still rests warmly across the wooden floor. Outside, the night carries the sound of distant water trickling in a stream, a rhythm that joins the steady cadence of your breath. In, out. In, out. Each inhale is like drawing a gentle fence around yourself. Each exhale is like opening the gate to let the air move freely. Breath itself becomes the teacher of boundaries. soft, alive, never rigid, yet always clear. The practice of mindful breathing has long been used to steady wandering thoughts. It is not dramatic. It doesn't dazzle like a firework or demand like a storm. Instead, it quietly shows that life flows in her measured cycles, taking in, letting out, repeating. If you inhale endlessly without exhaling, the body suffers. If you give away every breath without taking in air, the body collapses. Balance is compassion. Boundaries are built into the lungs. In moments of people-pleasing, the rhythm often collapses. You find yourself giving breath after breath, offering yes after yes, until there is no air left for you. And then resentment, exhaustion, or even illness arises. But mindful breathing whispers, you too must breathe. You too must be nourished. Compassion does not ask you to suffocate. Zen monasteries sometimes train novices by having them sit facing a wall. It may sound severe, but the wall is not punishment. It is a mirror. As the hours stretch, every impulse to please, to explain, to perform, rises and falls against that blank surface. No audience watches. No teacher praises. The wall remains silent, yet it becomes a companion. The novice learns. Even without applause, I still exist. Even without approval, my breath still flows. Tonight, picture yourself seated before such a wall. The lantern's glow softens behind you, but the wall itself reflects nothing back. You breathe, and the breath is enough. Each exhale lands softly against the surface. Each inhale returns to you unaltered. There is no criticism, no praise, only the steady rhythm of being alive. The Buddha once explained that the body is not separate from the world. It is the meeting point. Your skin is not a fortress. It is where air and temperature, wind and touch meet your being. This truth can reshape how you understand boundaries. Too often, people think of boundaries as cold walls or locked doors. But the skin shows another model, a living, breathing surface that touches the world without dissolving into it. It allows some things in, warmth, air, while protecting against what would harm. It is porous, flexible, and alive. You might ask yourself, what if my boundaries could be like breath, like skin, gentle, alive, never harsh, but always clear? Would saying no feel less like rejection and more like natural exhalation? Would saying yes feel less like sacrifice and more like breathing in what you truly need? There is an old story of a monk who meditated so deeply that even when villagers banged drums to test him, he remained unshaken. When asked how he kept focus, he said, "I do not fight the sound. I let it enter and leave as it wishes." His breath was his fence. It reminded him that sound could arrive without taking over. Similarly, requests and opinions can enter your awareness without seizing your identity. Listen now to your own environment, the subtle hum of a fridge, the whisper of air through vents, the shifting creaks of your house at night. None of these sounds demand your approval. They simply pass through. Isn't it curious how much of life unfolds without you needing to please or resist? As you breathe, picture your boundaries forming not as rigid walls, but as a glowing outline around your body. The outline pulses gently with each inhale and exhale, flexible yet steady. Someone's request touches it. Your outline quivers, then steadies. You choose whether to open or remain closed, not from guilt, but from wisdom. This is the gift of breath, a reminder that you are always in relationship, yet always distinct. The world touches you, but you do not have to dissolve into it. Zen masters sometimes pose questions that seem simple, but are meant to linger. Here is one. When the breath stops, what boundary remains? The question isn't meant to frighten, but to highlight how precious each inhale and exhale really is. Boundaries are not about separation alone. They are about honoring the fragile gift of being alive. The lantern's flame flickers lower still, but your awareness grows softer, like a blanket settling over your shoulders. The story continues without urgency, just as breath continues without effort. A stream still flows outside, the night still hums with hidden insects, and you still breathe. Each inhale a gift to yourself, each exhale a gift to the world. Boundaries do not need to be shouted or forced. They can be as subtle as breath, as natural as skin, as steady as the wall that reflects nothing but still offers everything. And in this way, compassion and boundaries are not opposites. They are two parts of the same living rhythm, teaching you to give and receive with balance, with care, with quiet dignity. The path through the night grows softer, lined with stars that seem to lean closer, as if they too are listening. Each step taken upon the ground becomes part of the rhythm, a heartbeat in motion. Walking itself, slow and mindful, becomes the story now, a reminder that every choice in life is simply one step after another. In Zen practice, walking meditation is called kinhin, but you don't need to know its name to feel its essence. The idea is simple. One foot lifts, moves forward, sets down, and the other follows. Step, breathe, step, breathe. The body sways slightly, arms relaxed, gaze soft. Instead of chasing a destination, the practice is about inhabiting the moment of each step. And in this simple rhythm, lessons about boundaries and compassion come alive. Consider this. When you walk too quickly to please someone else's pace, you stumble. When you drag your steps to avoid upsetting someone, resentment builds. But when you walk at your true rhythm, you honor both your body and your path. People-pleasing often feels like sprinting when you're tired, or tiptoeing when you long to stride. The simple act of steady steps shows another way. Compassion does not mean erasing your pace. It means sharing the road without losing yourself. The Buddha taught that right effort is not about doing everything or nothing. It is about avoiding extremes. It is the effort that sustains rather than burns out. Walking meditation reveals this truth. Push too hard, and you lose balance. Go too soft, and you collapse. The middle effort is where steadiness lives. Boundaries are like that. They are not walls to shut out others, nor open doors that leave you defenseless. They are the measured steps that keep you steady on the path. A quirky tradition among monks during long meditation retreats is to practice night walking. After hours of still sitting, they rise in the darkness, form a line, and walk slowly in the courtyard. No words are spoken, only the sound of sandals brushing stone and the shared rhythm of steps beneath the stars. Each monk moves at the same deliberate pace, yet each carries their own breath, their own balance. The practice is beautiful because it shows how individuality and harmony can coexist without anyone forcing themselves to please or control. Imagine yourself now walking on a quiet path at night. The stars are bright, the ground soft with earth. You hear crickets, you feel the cool night air against your skin. Each step is yours, your speed, your rhythm. Alongside you, others may walk, but they are not measuring you, and you are not racing them. The steps simply fall into place, like notes in a shared song. This is what it means to walk with compassion and boundaries together. When you live to please, your steps often feel stolen. Someone else sets the direction, and you hurry to keep up. But what if each step you took was chosen with care, steady, and free? Could life feel less like chasing approval and more like walking beneath the stars, side by side, but never erased? There is a story of a monk and his student traveling a long road. The student kept glancing nervously at his teacher, adjusting his stride to match, worrying about seeming disrespectful. Finally, the teacher stopped and said, "Walk as yourself. If you try to walk as me, we will both stumble." The student laughed, realizing the truth. Compassion is not mimicry, but authenticity. You hear your own steps even now, perhaps only in imagination. The sound is steady, gentle, unforced. Isn't it curious how grounding that is? To simply notice a step, without judgment, without performance. Each step is a boundary. This foot, here now. And yet each step also joins the earth, connecting you to everything. Boundaries and compassion are not opposites. They are the same rhythm, one heel lifting, one soul meeting the ground. Reflect for a moment. How do you walk through your days? Do you run when asked, dragging behind when unacknowledged, constantly adjusting to win approval? Or could you begin to walk at your true pace, trusting that those who belong beside you will find their rhythm too? Zen masters often ask questions that hover like stars, never needing answers. One such question might be, if you do not know your own pace, how will you ever arrive? It lingers, gentle, nudging you to feel your step more deeply. The lantern's glow still holds steady at the threshold, but now it seems to echo the starlight above, each flicker a reminder of rhythm and constancy. You breathe, you step, you rest. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell fades, like footsteps disappearing into silence. The story does not end here. It continues in every breath and every step. To walk is to choose, and to choose is to shape boundaries. Yet with each step, compassion joins, for your rhythm also becomes a gift to those around you. The road is long, but walked this way, it no longer feels heavy. It feels like life itself, a gentle stride between the stars. The stars above shimmer like quiet lanterns, each one casting its own subtle glow without competing for attention. Their light travels across impossible distances, yet it arrives here, tonight, without demand or pride. This image blends into the next teaching. The 8 winds, praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, fame and disgrace. These winds swirl through every life, sometimes lifting us, sometimes toppling us, always moving. Picture yourself as a candle flame in a drafty room. The winds push, bend, and flicker the flame. When you live only to please others, each gust seems overwhelming. A kind word lifts your spirits high. A criticism cuts you down. A small gain fills you with joy. A tiny loss floods you with despair. Yet the flame has another possibility: to burn steadily, even as winds blow, not by fighting, but by centering itself in the quiet of the wick. The 8 winds are not punishments. They are conditions of life, as natural as weather. No one avoids them. Even the Buddha was praised and blamed, honored and mocked. To please others endlessly is to believe you can control the winds. But what if, instead, you let them blow, knowing they will change again and again. There is a story of a monk who wrote a poem on a temple wall. The poem spoke of stillness in the face of life's changes. Another monk, disapproving, scrawled his own correction beneath. When the first monk saw the edit, he smiled, bowed, and wrote once more, "Thank you for completing my teaching." He did not cling to the praise of those who admired his words, nor to the criticism of those who corrected them. He let the wind pass through, steady as the flame of his practice. In Zen life, this steadiness is often expressed in simple instructions. After a meal, for example, monks are told, "Wash your bowl." That's it. No applause, no complaint. Just return to the simple act of cleaning what you used. When the 8 winds swirl, this phrase returns. Wash your bowl? Praise? Wash your bowl. Blame? Wash your bowl. Gain or loss, pleasure or pain. It all dissolves in the act of returning to what is present, what is real. Now imagine yourself after a long day. Someone praised you and your heart soared. Someone else criticized you and your stomach tightened. The winds pulled you in opposite directions. But tonight, as you listen, you picture setting both aside. You walk to a sink, rinse a bowl, feel warm water over your hands. The task is ordinary, grounding. It whispers, life continues. You do not need to chase or resist the winds. You need only return to presence. The Buddha once described equanimity as a state where the mind is like a mountain. Storms crash, clouds gather, winds howl, but the mountain remains unmoved at its core. On the slopes, yes, weather changes, but in the heart of the rock, stillness holds. Boundaries serve as that mountain core, protecting you from collapsing into every gust. Compassion flows from that steadiness, because only when you stand firm can you truly shelter others. A quirky Zen ritual illustrates this beautifully. In some temples, when strong winds sweep across the grounds, monks hang strips of paper from trees and listen to the sound they make as the air moves through them. The paper flutters, hums, even tears, but the tree itself stands. The practice reminds them, be like the tree, not the paper. Let the winds pass. Let the sound arise and fall. But keep your roots steady. Reflect for a moment. Which of the 8 winds moves you most easily? Is it praise? Do you feel inflated when noticed? Deflated when ignored? Is it criticism? Does even a small, harsh word echo endlessly in your chest? Is it loss, or perhaps the craving for gain? Imagine that whichever wind pushes hardest against you is like air against your cheek, strong but temporary. What if you could feel it without being carried away? Listen now to the quiet in your room. Perhaps a faint hum of electricity, or the sigh of wind through a crack in the window. These are your winds tonight. They arrive, they move, they go. You are not their puppet. You are the flame, steady at the wick, letting them pass. Zen masters often ask their students questions that twist the mind into new shapes. One might ask here, if the winds never stop blowing, where will you build your house? The answer is not a place, but a state of being, within your own steadiness, within your own boundaries. The lantern at the threshold flickers again, as if stirred by one of those 8 winds. Yet it does not fight to burn brighter, nor does it whimper when the flame bends. It simply continues, alive in its purpose. This, too, is the lesson for tonight. The winds will blow. They always will. But your steadiness, your boundaries, your compassionate flame can endure through them, untouched at the core. The lantern's flame steadies again, no longer swaying, and the night grows deeper with a hush that feels like velvet pressed gently over the world. In this silence, the heart begins to turn toward kindness, not the kind that empties itself to please, but the kind that includes its own beating core. Tonight's story is about kindness that begins at home, within, before spilling outward to others. It is easy to believe that compassion means giving everything away. Many who struggle with people-pleasing think of kindness as sacrifice. Their energy, their time, their very sense of self. Yet true compassion is wider, richer, and strangely more balanced. Imagine a candle. If the flame burns, but the wax is never replenished, soon there is nothing left. But if the candle is tended, protected, its flame warms a whole room without exhausting itself too soon. The Buddha often pointed out that love begins with oneself. If you cannot wish yourself well, how deeply can you wish well for others? It is not selfishness, but sanity to include your own name in the circle of care. Think of it like breathing. You inhale first, filling your lungs, before sharing the exhale with the world. Without that inhale, there is nothing to give. A curious practice in some Zen communities reflects this teaching. Monks sew a garment called a rakusu, a small bib-like robe made of many stitched pieces of cloth. The sewing is slow, sometimes tedious, each stitch a meditation. The robe represents vows and belonging, but it also represents care. When the fabric frays, it must be repaired. To wear a torn garment without mending would show neglect, not only of the cloth, but of the practice itself. In the same way, to neglect yourself in the name of compassion is to weaken the very fabric of care. Imagine your own life as that robe, stitched from countless moments of effort, tenderness, and experience. Some patches are bright, others faded, a few worn thin. To care for others while ignoring your own fraying edges is to let the robe fall apart. To mend it with patience is not vanity, it is respect. Could you see your boundaries not as selfish walls, but as the seams that keep the whole cloth together? Now close your eyes for a moment and picture offering kindness to yourself, not in grand gestures, but in small, steady ways. Resting when tired, speaking gently inside your own mind, saying no when yes would hurt you. Isn't it curious how radical such small acts feel in a world that demands constant giving? Yet these stitches hold the fabric of compassion in place. A story is told of a woman who asked a monk, "How can I love my neighbor as myself if I do not love myself?" The monk replied, "Then begin there. Pour tea into your own cup first. When it is full, it will overflow naturally into others." This is the heart of tonight's lesson. To release people-pleasing is not to abandon compassion. It is to root it in authenticity, where care for self and others intertwine. Notice your breath again. Each inhale is like threading the needle, pulling the thread through the fabric. Each exhale is like the knot, holding the stitch in place. Slowly, gently, you mend. With every breath, you reinforce that robe of kindness, making it strong enough to endure. Zen masters sometimes ask questions that feel like riddles, but are really mirrors. One such question might be, if you cannot smile at yourself, how real is your smile for another? The thought lingers, soft but sharp, pointing inward, not with blame, but with invitation. The lantern at the threshold glows warmly, as though nodding in agreement. Its light touches you as much as it touches the path outside. It does not choose only others. It shines on itself as well, casting a soft halo around its own frame. Perhaps compassion is like that, radiating outward without forgetting the source. As you drift deeper into the story, the stars remain overhead. The night holds you steady, and the gentle truth settles in. Kindness that excludes yourself is incomplete. Boundaries are not rejections, but repairs, the mending stitches that allow compassion to last. To include yourself in that circle is not arrogance, it is wholeness. So let tonight be a reminder. Your heart deserves the same gentleness you long to give away. Care for your robe, care for your flame, care for your breath. And then, when you step forward to meet the world, your compassion will not be performance, not exhaustion, but genuine light that lasts. The lantern's glow deepens into a circle of light on the ground, like a drawn shape holding space in the night. Circles in Zen are more than decoration. They are a reminder of wholeness, of the completeness found in simplicity. Tonight, the circle becomes the teaching of boundaries, the gentle no that is also a yes to authenticity. Picture an artist taking a brush and with one sweep, painting a circle in ink. This circle, called an enso, is neither perfect nor flawed. It may close fully, or it may leave a gap. Either way, it shows that limits are not the end of freedom, but the form that makes expression possible. Without the circle, ink would wander endlessly across the page. With it, the shape emerges, alive, contained, beautiful. Boundaries work like that. They give form to compassion, keeping it from dissolving into exhaustion. For people pleasers, saying no can feel like betrayal. A refusal seems harsh, unkind, or unloving. Yet a circle that opens everywhere holds nothing. A no is the stroke of the brush. It completes the form, allowing what is inside to breathe. Saying no is not rejection, but definition. It is how your compassion keeps its shape. One story tells of a monk asked to work beyond his strength. Instead of collapsing under the weight of duty, he bowed and replied gently, "No, I cannot." His voice was not angry, nor was it defensive. It was calm, steady, compassionate. The refusal was not cold. It was warm, with honesty. The abbot, far from offended, nodded in respect. To speak truth without apology is one of the highest forms of care. The Buddha's teachings on right speech remind us that words should be truthful, timely, and beneficial. Many believe this only applies to comforting others, but it also applies to ourselves. If you say yes when your body screams no, is that truthful? If you agree out of fear, is that beneficial? A kind refusal, spoken clearly, may be far more aligned with compassion than a forced yes. There is a practice in some Zen halls where monks recite vows aloud, their voices rising together in chorus. The sound fills the hall like waves against stone. Each vow is a boundary, a circle drawn around what they choose to uphold. To chant, "I will not cause harm," is to say no to cruelty. To chant, "I will respect life," is to define how compassion will move. These vows are not chains, but circles. They free the monks by giving shape to their lives. Imagine yourself speaking such a vow to your own life. Perhaps the vow is, "I will not abandon myself in the name of pleasing others." Say it softly in your heart, as though whispering to the night. Notice how the words create space. They are not bars. They are a circle, holding warmth inside. Now reflect on this. How many times has your yes been a disguised no? How many times have you smiled while resentment brewed quietly beneath? To release people-pleasing, is to align your words with your truth, so that each yes is genuine, each no compassionate. Isn't it curious how much lighter the heart feels when honesty and kindness are no longer divided? A Zen master might pose a question. When the circle is drawn, is it open or closed? The question is a mirror for boundaries. A no may seem closed, but in truth, it is open. It opens space for rest, for authenticity, for genuine compassion to grow. The lantern continues to glow, its own circle of light spreading across the threshold. The flame does not apologize for stopping at the edges. Its circle is enough. Could your life be like that lantern, illuminating fully within your circle without needing to spill everywhere? Listen again to the night air. It moves softly, carrying scents of earth, leaves, perhaps rain lingering from earlier. The air does not try to fill every space at once. It flows where it can, gentle, persistent. Boundaries are like this, flexible, natural, never absolute, but always shaping how presence is shared. So tonight, as you drift deeper into stillness, let the image of the circle stay with you. Imagine drawing one gently around yourself, not to wall yourself off, but to honor the shape of your being. Inside that circle, compassion breathes freely. Outside, others can still approach, but they do so with respect for your edges. In this way, your no becomes not rejection, but art. Not coldness, but clarity. Not weakness, but the brush stroke of freedom. The night is quieter now, as though the air itself has slowed to listen. The lantern flickers softly, its light touching the path, then retreating, then returning again. Tonight, the story turns toward searching, specifically the search for approval, as if it were some wild animal to be tracked. The metaphor of the ox, often used in Zen teachings, becomes our guide here. Imagine a vast plain stretching under moonlight. In the distance are footprints pressed into the earth, signs of a great ox moving through. The ox represents our true nature, steady and powerful, but often hidden by the tall grass of distraction and desire. In the case of people-pleasing, the ox we chase is not our true self, but the approval of others. We bend down, squinting at every mark in the soil, trying to follow where praise might lead. At first, the search seems urgent. If we can just find the right trail, we think, then maybe others will smile at us, love us, approve of us. We treat every compliment like a footprint, every nod like a sign of progress. But the more we chase, the more lost we become. The ox of approval is not real. It vanishes the moment we think we've grasped it. The Buddha taught that craving for recognition is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. No amount of praise can quench the longing if the heart does not already rest in itself. Isn't it curious how the loudest applause often fades into silence faster than we expect? Like footsteps on sand, approval disappears with the tide. Zen monasteries sometimes encourage students to sit outside at night, listening to insects sing. The practice is not about insects at all, but about noticing small, ordinary sounds that ask for nothing. A cricket does not care if you approve of its song. It chirps because chirping is what it does. Listening reminds students, life is not waiting for your applause. Could you live like the cricket, doing what you do because it is your nature, not because others clap? Imagine yourself standing on that moonlit plain. You see the footprints, yes, but you also hear the night chorus of insects. At first, you're tempted to keep following the trail. But then a thought arises. What if the ox of approval is not worth chasing? What if the real ox, the true strength, the true self, is already here, waiting to be noticed within? The lantern glows softly at the threshold, like a distant guidepost. It does not cheer you on or criticize your steps. It simply shines. Could you allow your own life to be like that? Steady, luminous, not begging for notice, but offering light because that is its nature. A story tells of a student who once boasted to his teacher, "The villagers all admire me for my discipline." The teacher laughed and said, "Then you are their ox, not your own." The words pierced like a bell. To live for approval is to be owned by others, yoked to their opinions. To live authentically is to become your own ox, strong and free. Pause here and reflect. When was the last time you acted not from a desire to please, but from genuine truth? How did that feel? Did your body relax, your breath deepen, your shoulders loosen? These signals are clues. The true ox leaves its tracks in the body's ease. Zen masters often ask questions designed to unsettle the chasing mind. Here is one for tonight. If the ox is already yours, why do you keep chasing its shadow? The question hangs in the night air like a star, bright, unreachable, yet somehow comforting. Listen again to your own surroundings, perhaps the faint buzz of electricity, or the creak of wood, or the hush of your own breath. None of these sounds beg for approval. They simply are. Could your life become like that? Lived for its own sake, shining in its own rhythm? The lantern's flame steadies once more. The plain, the footprints, the insects, all dissolve into the soft darkness. What remains is the simple truth. The ox of approval is a phantom. Your real strength, your real compassion, is found not in chasing footprints, but in standing still, breathing deeply, and living as yourself. The night grows cooler, as if the stars themselves are exhaling. The lantern light softens, spreading like a gentle brushstroke across the ground, and the story shifts again. Now the focus turns to footprints in sand, not of an ox, but of habits. Each step you've taken in life leaves a mark, and the patterns of people-pleasing are like trails pressed into soft earth. Imagine standing on a wide beach just after sunrise. The tide has gone out, leaving damp sand that holds impressions clearly. You walk, and behind you stretches a line of footprints, some deep, some shallow, some overlapping where you doubled back. This is the way habits form. Each choice presses a mark. Walk the same path enough times, and the sand hardens into a trail. So it is with saying yes too often, smiling when you don't mean it, giving more than you can. The habits dig grooves that can feel impossible to escape. The Buddha often compared habits to ruts in a cart track. Once the wheel falls into the rut, it rolls there naturally. To please others becomes automatic. You say yes before thinking, apologize before knowing if you've done wrong, offer help before checking if you have strength left. The rut deepens, but ruts can be filled, footprints erased. The tide always returns. A gentle practice used in Zen temples for centuries is called shakyo, copying sacred texts by hand. The monk dips a brush in ink, draws each character slowly, and repeats until the whole text is complete. To some, it seems repetitive, but it is precisely repetition that matters. Shakyo retrains the hand, the eye, and the mind. The old habits of haste and distraction dissolve into the rhythm of ink and brush. What once was restless becomes patient. In the same way, new habits of compassion with boundaries can be written into the sand of your life. Each time you pause before saying yes, each time you breathe before apologizing, each time you ask yourself, "Is this true to me?" you make a new footprint. At first, the old trails pull strongly, just as the brush wavers when first learning. But with time, the new path becomes clearer, firmer. Picture yourself kneeling with brush in hand, writing not words on paper, but choices into your day. Each stroke is slow, careful, intentional. You are not racing for approval. You are shaping a new habit to respond with care instead of reflex, with balance instead of fear. Isn't it curious how such small shifts can reweave the whole fabric of life? On the beach, as the tide returns, old footprints fade. The marks that once seemed permanent wash away. leaving smooth sand again. People-pleasing habits may feel carved in stone, but they too can soften. Change does not arrive in one dramatic wave, but in countless ripples of intention. Tonight, as you listen, imagine the tide slowly covering your footprints, erasing the grooves of reflexive yes, smoothing the surface so you may walk freely again. The lantern glows steady, like a witness to your rewriting. It does not judge the old footprints. It simply lights the space where new ones may appear. This is compassion without clinging, kindness that includes the past but does not trap itself there. A Zen master once asked a student to sweep the same courtyard every morning, even though the wind always blew leaves back within hours. Frustrated, the student complained, "What is the point?" "The leaves return." The master replied, "The point is that you return." The lesson is clear. Changing habits is not about final perfection, but about showing up, step after step, sweep after sweep. Reflect now. What habits of pleasing others have left the deepest footprints in your life? Do you notice them in your body? Tension in the chest when someone frowns? A quick nod before you've even thought? A smile that feels forced? Each of these is a footprint in sand. Could you let the tide of awareness begin to soften them? Could you practice new steps, lighter ones, even if imperfect? Listen to the room around you. Perhaps the faint tick of a clock, the settling of wood, the sigh of your own breath. These are habits of the house, repetitions that make a rhythm. They are not traps. They are simply patterns. So too are your habits of pleasing. And just as clocks can be reset, patterns can be rewritten. Zen teachers love to ask questions that unsettle assumptions. One might ask, if the tide will erase every footprint, why do you still cling to the trail? The question is not cruel, but liberating. It suggests that freedom is closer than you think. The lantern's flame flickers once, as if stirred by the imagined ocean breeze. The beach, the footprints, the tide, all dissolve into darkness, leaving only the truth that habits are not prisons, but patterns, and patterns can change. The sand of life is soft enough to be reshaped. Tonight, you take one step, then another, not to please, but to walk your own path across the shore. The lantern at the threshold holds steady, its flame like a soft rope glowing in the dark. The image of rope brings tonight's story to another layer: patience and the gentle taming of reflex. People-pleasing is not always a deliberate choice. It often leaps from us like a startled animal, quick and unthinking. A friend asks for help, and before the mind has time to check, the mouth says yes. Someone frowns, and instantly we rush to smooth it over. The reflex feels stronger than us, but even wild habits can be guided, like an animal learning to walk calmly on a rope. Imagine holding a rope loosely in your hands. At first, the animal at the other end pulls and jerks, nearly dragging you off your feet. Your instinct might be to yank back, to fight force with force. But the real skill is in patience, letting the rope slacken, guiding slowly, waiting for the pull to ease. This is how habits are softened, not by violence, but by steadiness. One ancient exercise teaches this patience through counting breaths. The monk sits quietly, hands folded, and counts each inhale and exhale up to 7. Then begins again. The trick is not in reaching a goal, but in noticing when the mind darts away. If you lose track, you simply return. Each time you return, the reflex weakens a little. The practice is like holding the rope gently until the animal stops thrashing. For someone who always says yes too quickly, this breath counting can be transformative. Imagine a friend asking for a favor. Instead of blurting a reflexive agreement, you breathe once, twice, up to 7 in your mind. In that pause, space opens. You realize whether you can truly give or whether you need to say no. The rope is no longer dragging you. You are guiding it. The Buddha once compared the mind to a wild horse, difficult to control, always eager to bolt. But with training, patience, and steady care, the horse learns to walk beside you instead of against you. In the same way, the reflex to please others can be tamed, not crushed, but guided into balance. In some Zen monasteries, there is a quirky custom of sitting outside in the bitter cold of winter nights. The monks wrap themselves in blankets and simply breathe, counting softly in rhythm. The discomfort of the cold sharpens awareness, forcing them to notice each breath. This practice, called yaza, teaches resilience. The cold cannot be controlled, just as other people's opinions cannot be controlled. But the breath can be steady, the rope held firm. Isn't it curious how the body, though chilled, finds warmth in patience? Picture yourself now with a rope in your hands. At the other end is not an animal, but your own habit of rushing to please. It tugs sharply, demanding you agree, perform, smile. But instead of being yanked forward, you pause. You count 7 breaths. Each inhale loosens the pull. Each exhale steadies your grip. Slowly, the habit calms, realizing it no longer controls you. Reflect on your own life. How often do you feel dragged into decisions before you've had time to breathe? Could you imagine inserting just 7 breaths before answering? 7 simple breaths. A pause so small, yet powerful enough to shift your entire pattern. Zen masters often ask riddles that point straight to the heart. One might ask here, if patience is the rope, who is truly holding whom? The question lingers, mysterious yet clear. Perhaps the habit is not an enemy to subdue, but a companion to guide. The lantern at the threshold glows brighter for a moment, as if affirming this. Its light stretches like a rope into the night, not forcing the darkness back, but guiding the way gently. Boundaries, too, work like this, not as rigid chains, but as steady ropes that guide your steps, preventing you from being dragged into exhaustion. The night continues around you, the quiet hum of unseen insects, the soft sigh of wind through branches, the subtle creaks of your own home. These sounds remind you that life itself is patient. Trees grow slowly. Rivers carve valleys over centuries. Stars burn for eons. Why then should your growth need to be rushed? Each breath, each pause, each gentle tug of the rope is enough. So tonight, let this be your practice. 7 breaths before every reflex. 7 breaths before every yes. 7 breaths before every apology. In those 7 breaths lies freedom, the chance to respond with truth instead of habit, compassion instead of exhaustion, boundaries instead of collapse. The lantern's flame steadies again, and the rope in your hands feels lighter now. The habit is calmer, the reflex less demanding. You smile softly, realizing the truth. Patience is not weakness, and taming is not suppression. Patience is strength, and taming is guidance. And in this quiet strength, compassion and boundaries walk hand in hand. The night moves deeper still, and the lantern's glow seems to rest lower, casting long shadows across the floor like gentle brush strokes of ink. The story now turns toward taming habits more fully. Not just one reflex, but the entire herd of tendencies that stampede through the mind when approval is on the line. People-pleasing is rarely a single act. It is a collection of small, repeated patterns that together create a restless herd. The quick nods, the forced smiles, the automatic apologies. Tonight, we meet that herd and learn how to guide it. Imagine a valley at dawn. Mist lingers low, and in the distance, you see shapes moving. Oxen, restless, scattered. Each ox is a habit. One represents your fear of saying no. Another represents your craving for praise. Another pulls toward fixing problems that aren't yours. Alone, each ox might be manageable. Together, they thunder like a stampede. It feels impossible to stand against them. The Buddha once compared the untamed mind to a field of wild animals, each chasing its own desire, dragging the person along. But he also taught the possibility of training. With steady guidance, patience, and balance, even a herd can learn to move calmly. The same is true of people-pleasing habits. They can be trained, not destroyed, but redirected into harmony. In Zen practice, there is a curious custom called yaza, late night sitting. After the scheduled meditation ends, some monks choose to remain, sitting quietly, while others rest. In the silence of midnight, habits and impulses arise more clearly. Fatigue tempts them to quit. Boredom urges them to fidget. Memories demand attention. Yet by staying, by breathing, by returning again and again, they tame the herd of impulses one by one. They learn that not every thought requires obedience. You, too, have moments of yaza in daily life. Those late hours when someone texts with a request, or when guilt rises uninvited. In those moments, you can choose to stay seated in yourself. You don't need to leap, to answer, to please. You can breathe, notice the herd stirring, and let it settle again. Isn't it striking how silence itself can become an act of courage? Picture yourself standing at the edge of the valley, watching the herd. At first, they charge wildly, each ox tugging at a different direction. But you do not chase them. You plant your feet. Slowly, they circle back. One by one, they quiet. The ox of praise lowers its head. The ox of guilt slows its trot. The herd begins to move together, not against you. This is the power of the middle way, neither indulging every impulse nor fighting them violently, but guiding with steadiness. Reflect now. Which ox in your herd pulls the strongest? Is it the craving for someone's smile? Is it the dread of their disappointment? Imagine that ox clearly, its eyes wild, its hooves striking. And then picture yourself holding the rope from the previous section, breathing 7 breaths, waiting. The ox slows. The herd watches. Suddenly, the stampede feels less like chaos and more like possibility. A Zen story tells of a farmer whose oxen broke free and trampled the fields. Neighbors rushed to help, shouting and chasing. But the farmer simply sat, whistling softly. In time, the oxen returned on their own, calmed by the familiar sound. "Why did you not run after them?" the neighbors asked. He smiled, "Because running would only scatter them farther." The story whispers a lesson. Chasing after habits with fear only multiplies them. Waiting, guiding, breathing, that is how they return. Listen now to the sounds around you. Perhaps the creak of wood, the faint hum of a distant car, the sigh of air in your room. These are like the oxen too. Many small noises moving at once. But notice how none of them demand your panic. They move, you listen, and stillness returns. Could your habits be treated the same way? Not as enemies, but as noises that fade when not fed? Zen masters often ask strange questions that uncover hidden truths. One might ask, if the herd runs wild in your mind, who is really leading, you or the oxen? The question lingers like mist, encouraging you to pause before answering. The lantern at the threshold glows softly, as if it too has learned to tame its flame. It does not flare wildly with every gust of wind, nor does it dim into nothingness. It steadies, flickers, steadies again. In this way, it mirrors your practice, not perfect, not rigid, but patient enough to outlast the winds. Tonight, as you drift toward rest, imagine your herd of habits slowly gathering into calm. They no longer trample your peace, no longer scatter your energy. They graze quietly, each one acknowledged, but not obeyed. You are no longer their servant. You are their guide. And in this guiding, compassion becomes real, not exhausting, not endless, but sustainable. The lantern burns lower, though it still casts its circle of warmth upon the threshold. The night feels deeper now, quieter, as though time itself has slowed its pace. Within this stillness comes a new teaching. How ease can be ridden like a gentle horse back toward home. Boundaries are not stiff lines to be defended with clenched fists. They are living reins that can guide your energy where it belongs. When held lightly, they carry you back to yourself. Picture a rider on a horse at twilight. The reins are not pulled tight, nor are they dropped entirely. The rider holds them with softness, trusting the horse, guiding when needed, allowing freedom when possible. This balance is what boundaries can be. Too tight, and compassion turns rigid. Too loose, and compassion dissolves into exhaustion. But with gentle steadiness, care flows naturally, both for yourself and for others. In Zen tradition, the tea ceremony often embodies this balance. Guests enter, bowing respectfully. The host prepares tea with deliberate grace, neither rushing nor delaying. Every movement is precise, yet relaxed. The bowl is offered with both hands, an act of full presence and care. But here is the secret. The ceremony is not endless. When the tea is finished, the host bows once more, cleans the bowl, and the gathering ends. Boundaries are honored. Compassion is complete, then released. Isn't it curious how often in daily life we forget this? We give, but we forget to close the circle. We say yes, but we forget to release when the act is done. We carry conversations long after they end, replaying whether we pleased enough. The tea ceremony whispers, offer fully, then bow, then rest. The reins guide us home. The Buddha taught that balance, neither indulgence nor denial, is the way to peace. In practice, this means holding compassion without gripping it so tightly that it turns into self-erasure. Boundaries here are not barriers, but reins. Living, flexible, responsive. They allow you to care without losing your way. Imagine yourself in a quiet room, a cup of tea warm in your hands. The taste is simple, earthy, soothing. You savor it fully, without distraction. And then, when the last sip is gone, you bow to the empty cup. You do not keep filling it endlessly to prove your generosity. You honor the completion. Could you live your days like this? Offering fully, finishing clearly, resting freely. A story tells of a teacher who once poured tea into a student's cup until it overflowed. The student panicked, saying, "Stop! It is full." The teacher replied, "So is your mind, always trying to please, always overflowing." Until you learn to stop, nothing new can enter boundaries then, are the hand that halts the pouring. They keep compassion meaningful rather than wasteful. Zen monasteries sometimes practice a silent walk after tea, stepping slowly through gardens. The act seals the gathering, allowing each person to carry the warmth home without clinging. This gentle ending is as important as the tea itself. In your own life, imagine walking after acts of kindness, not to seek more approval, but to let the moment close. The reins guide you onward, not backward. Reflect now. How often do you overextend after kindness, chasing the echo of someone's gratitude? How would it feel instead to bow, release, and walk on, trusting the act to stand on its own? Perhaps boundaries are not about saying no to others, but about saying yes to endings. Zen masters often pose questions that seem simple but cut deep. One might ask here, if the horse already knows the way home, why are you pulling so hard? The question reveals the truth. Ease itself can guide you if you stop gripping so tightly. Listen again to the sounds around you, perhaps the faint settling of your house or the hum of night outside. These sounds arrive, exist, and fade. They do not chase after applause, nor linger to prove themselves. They complete their cycle and move on. Boundaries can be just like that, natural closures that keep energy flowing smoothly. The lantern at the threshold glows steadily, its flame thinner now, but still bright enough to mark the path. It does not try to illuminate the whole world. It shines within its circle, and that is enough. You, too, can shine within your circle, holding the reins lightly, guiding your compassion home without strain. So tonight, as sleep gathers like a soft cloak, let the image of horse and reins, tea and bow, lantern and circle rest in your heart. Compassion is not endless pouring, not frantic chasing. It is a ride back home, reins steady, breath calm, warmth offered, then released. And in that release, ease begins to carry you, like a trusted companion, toward rest. The lantern's flame quivers as though listening to the silence itself, and shadows stretch in gentle arcs across the threshold. Tonight, the teaching turns toward the meeting of two truths, that form is boundary and emptiness is care. At first, these ideas seem to pull in opposite directions. Form suggests definition, structure, limits. Emptiness suggests openness, spaciousness, the absence of clinging. Yet in Zen thought, they are not opposites, but reflections of one another. Picture a clay cup resting on a table. The cup's walls form its shape, giving it edges and solidity. Without those walls, there would be no container at all. Yet what makes the cup useful is not the clay itself, but the empty space inside. Form and emptiness depend on each other. Without edges, no space. Without space, no purpose. In the same way, boundaries and compassion are not contradictions. Boundaries are the form. Compassion is the emptiness within. Together, they make a life that holds meaning. For the people pleaser, this truth is vital. Too often, compassion is mistaken for filling every request, pouring endlessly until nothing is left. But a cup that leaks at every seam cannot hold water for long. A self without edges cannot hold compassion. The form of boundary makes the emptiness of care possible. The Buddha often pointed to this interdependence, teaching that identity is not fixed, but arises from conditions. Boundaries, too, are conditions, shapes we create to allow care to move without collapsing. Isn't it curious how something as simple as a clay rim can embody such a profound truth? There is a Zen koan where a monk asks, "What is MU?" The master replies, not with words, but with presence. MU is emptiness, not a void, but a spaciousness that allows everything to exist. In your own life, MU might look like this. When you say no, the space opens for someone else to find their own strength. When you rest, the space opens for renewal. Emptiness becomes care. In monasteries, this teaching is lived through the enso, the hand-drawn circle of ink. Each circle is imperfect, lines thick or thin, edges closed or open, yet each contains both form and space. The brush stroke is boundary. The white space is openness. Together, they show that life is whole, not when boundaries vanish, but when boundaries and compassion breathe as one. Imagine drawing such a circle now in your mind. The brush moves, a line appears, and suddenly a space is born. You see both at once, the edge and the openness it protects. Could your boundaries be seen this way? Not as rejections, but as shapes that allow compassion to live? Reflect on your day. Were there moments when your care spilled too far, when you gave beyond your strength? And were there moments when you held back too tightly, closing the circle too firmly? The teaching here whispers, neither extreme is whole. The cup must have both clay and space. The enso must have both ink and openness. Zen masters often pose questions that bend logic into insight. One might ask, if the cup is only space, can you drink from it? If it is only clay, what will it hold? The answer is not in words, but in living. Compassion requires form, and boundaries require care. A curious practice in Zen gardens reflects this union. Stones are arranged carefully, forming edges and shapes. Yet between them stretches open gravel, raked into ripples like water. The stones are form. The gravel is emptiness. Walking the garden, one feels balance, not too rigid, not too loose. Life, too, can be lived as such a garden, where boundaries and compassion form a single design. Listen now to the sounds around you, the quiet hums, the faint pulse of your own breath. Even silence has form and emptiness. The walls of your room give the silence shape, while the air within gives it depth. Could you imagine your boundaries this way? Not harsh walls, but gentle forms that give space for care to echo. The lantern glows on, its flame flickering, its glass edges forming the boundary that allows the light to shine safely. Without the glass, the flame would scatter and die in the wind. Without the flame, the glass would be meaningless. Together, they create a light that warms and guides. This is form and emptiness. Together, boundaries and compassion intertwined. So tonight, let the image of cup and space, brush stroke and circle, lantern and flame rest with you. Boundaries do not kill compassion. They allow it. Compassion does not erase boundaries. It fills them. To live in harmony with both is to discover that love is strongest when it has edges, and freedom is fullest when it has form. The lantern's light feels softer now, casting long, calm beams across the courtyard, as if sweeping it with its glow. Tonight, the story turns toward the act of sweeping itself, for sweeping is more than tidying dust. It is a way of clearing the weight of should. Those who spend their days people-pleasing often feel buried beneath invisible leaves. I should help. I should agree. I should smile. I should never disappoint. These leaves pile up until the heart feels heavy. Sweeping, in its quiet, teaches how to set them aside. Imagine monks gathering in a courtyard after morning meditation. Each one holds a simple broom, its bristles worn smooth. No one commands them, no one praises them. They sweep not for reward, but because sweeping itself is part of practice. The sound is gentle, rhythmic. Swish, swish, swish. Leaves scatter, dust rises, stones glisten once more. The courtyard becomes clear, not because someone demanded it, but because care was given freely, within limits. For the one caught in people-pleasing, this image is a balm. You cannot prevent leaves from falling, just as you cannot stop people from making requests, offering opinions, or carrying expectations. But you can sweep your own space. You can tend what is yours without carrying the weight of every leaf in the forest. Isn't it curious how small, deliberate acts can shift an entire atmosphere? The Buddha taught that right speech is more than avoiding lies. It is the choice to speak in ways that protect harmony and truth. People-pleasers often distort speech, not with malice, but with fear. They say yes when they mean no, soften truth until it disappears, or apologize when no harm was done. Each distortion is another fallen leaf. Sweeping here means restoring honesty, letting words fall into alignment with reality. A clear courtyard, a clear tongue, a clear heart. In Zen practice, sweeping the courtyard is called samu, work as meditation. No division exists between labor and prayer. To sweep leaves is to sweep the mind. To wash bowls is to wash away linging. One monk, when asked about enlightenment, simply held up his broom and said, "It is found here." The meaning is clear. Enlightenment is not escape from chores, but presence within them. Picture yourself holding a broom. Before you lie the shoulds of your life, the obligations you accepted to avoid disappointing others, the extra tasks you took on to win approval, the apologies spoken without need. Each one is a leaf. With one sweep, you clear a small space. With another, you see the ground. Slowly, the courtyard of your heart opens again. The leaves will return tomorrow, but tonight, for this moment, you breathe freely. There is a story of a young monk frustrated with endless sweeping. Why must we sweep every day if leaves just keep falling? He asked. His teacher smiled. Why do you eat every day if hunger returns? The point is not permanence, but practice. Sweeping daily is how clarity is maintained. In the same way, releasing people-pleasing is not a one-time decision, but a daily act, clearing the shoulds, choosing truth, setting limits, again and again. Reflect now. What should weigh most heavily on you? Perhaps it is the belief you must always be agreeable, or the fear that one refusal makes you unkind. Imagine placing that should on the ground like a dry leaf. Then imagine sweeping it aside. The sound is soft, almost musical. With each sweep, your chest feels lighter. Zen masters love to pose questions that unsettle the mind. One might ask, if no leaves fell, would you ever pick up the broom? The question hints that challenges, like requests, opinions, or demands, are not curses, but chances to practice. Without them, how would you learn to sweep? Listen again to your surroundings, the faint hums, the breaths, the creaks. These are your fallen leaves tonight. You do not need to silence them. You only notice, acknowledge, and let them drift by. Sweeping is not erasure. It is gentle redirection. The lantern at the threshold glows like a broom itself, brushing the darkness back just enough to reveal the path. It does not banish the night, nor does it collapse beneath it. It simply clears a circle of light where steps may be taken. In this way, the lantern becomes a teacher again. Sweep enough space for your own path, and let the rest of the forest remain as it is. So as you rest tonight, let sweeping be your metaphor. With each breath, sweep one leaf aside. A should, a worry, a false yes. Soon the courtyard of your heart shines clear beneath the stars. Tomorrow, leaves may fall again, but tonight you have space, and in that space, compassion rests within boundaries, steady and alive. The lantern still burns, though its flame is thin now, like a single brushstroke in the dark. Its glow gathers gently around the threshold, steady but calm. Tonight, the story turns toward the difficult moment, when someone makes a request that presses hard against your limits. These are the times when people-pleasing feels most powerful, because fear whispers, if I say no, they will be hurt, or angry, or gone. Yet Zen practice teaches that even sharp encounters can be met with soft edges. Imagine sitting in a small room with paper walls. Outside, footsteps approach, a knock at the door. Someone enters, carrying urgency, perhaps even demand. They ask for more than you can give: time, energy, attention. In the past, your reflex might be to bow quickly, to agree without pause, to silence your own needs. But tonight, the teaching offers another way: to meet the difficult with warmth in your eyes, silence in your breath, and clarity in your voice. The Buddha taught that compassion does not mean indulgence. To say yes to every request is not kindness if it destroys balance. Compassion is like a physician. Sometimes it soothes, sometimes it prescribes rest, sometimes it says no to more medicine. True care requires discernment. Boundaries, then, are not barriers to love, but expressions of wisdom. In some Zen communities, there is a practice of noble silence. For hours or even days, monks do not speak unless necessary. The silence is not cold, it is alive, filled with presence. During this time, requests are pared down to essentials, and words regain weight. Silence itself becomes a boundary, protecting both speaker and listener. Could you imagine using silence in the same way? Pausing before reflex, letting quiet carry the first answer? Sometimes the softest edge is no word at all, only presence. Picture yourself facing that demanding request. Instead of rushing to agree, you breathe. You let silence hold the space for a moment. Your eyes remain kind, your shoulders soft, your voice calm. You say, "I understand your need. I cannot do that now." The words are firm but not harsh, final yet compassionate. Isn't it curious how much strength lives in gentleness? A story tells of a Zen teacher approached by a villager, begging for endless favors. At first, the teacher helped freely, but as the requests grew heavier, the teacher finally bowed and said, "If I carry everything for you, how will you ever learn to walk?" The villager frowned, then slowly smiled, realizing the truth. Sometimes refusal is the highest form of kindness. Reflect on your own life. When has a refusal felt cruel, and when has it actually been a gift? Perhaps someone once told you, "No," and though you felt hurt at first, you later found strength you didn't know you had. In the same way, your own compassionate refusals may serve others more deeply than your exhausted yes. Zen masters love to ask questions that unsettle assumptions. One might ask here, if you never say no, are you truly saying yes? The riddle reveals that without boundaries, agreement loses meaning. A real yes requires the possibility of no. Listen again to the night around you. The quiet hums, the faint rustles, the subtle presence of your own breath. Each sound arrives, touches, and leaves. None demand you hold them forever. Difficult requests, too, can be treated this way, acknowledged, respected, and released. The lantern at the threshold glows softly, holding back the darkness just enough. It does not flare angrily when shadows press closer, nor does it extinguish itself to please the night. It holds its circle, steady, gentle. Could your life be like that lantern, meeting demands with warmth, but never surrendering your flame? So tonight, as you drift toward rest, let the lesson settle. Meeting the difficult does not mean collapsing or hardening. It means soft eyes, steady breath, and clear voice. Boundaries spoken with kindness become gifts, not rejections. They teach others to walk on their own, and they keep your flame alive for the journey ahead. The lantern's flame grows smaller now, though its glow is still steady. drawing a soft circle of light upon the threshold. The night has stretched long, and the teaching turns toward modern life, where boundaries are tested not only in face-to-face encounters, but through the endless hum of digital bells. Phones chime, screens light up, and messages arrive at every hour. Each one whispers, "Answer now. Say yes. Don't disappoint." For the people pleaser, these devices become like temples of demand, where every ping is treated as sacred. Yet just as monks learn to live by the sound of temple bells, so too can we learn to guide our relationship with these digital calls. Picture a monastery deep in the mountains. Each day, the Han, wooden clapper, sounds at set times. The bell rings for meditation, for meals, for rest. The rhythm of life is guided by sound, but no one mistakes the bell for an order to please. It is an invitation, steady and predictable, not frantic or endless. Contrast that with the smartphone on a bedside table, the buzz at midnight, the alert at dawn, the flood of messages. Instead of invitations, they feel like commands. We leap to respond, fearing silence might disappoint. The Buddha spoke often of mindfulness, awareness of what pulls the mind, awareness of how we respond. In digital life, this mindfulness becomes crucial. Each notification is like a gust of wind. If we bend to every one, we scatter. Boundaries here are not cruel refusals, but gentle walls that allow rest. Just as a temple sets times for bells, we too can set times for silence. Some Zen monks practice a quirky ritual of unhearing. When the bell rings, they bow, yet sometimes they choose not to move immediately. The bell is acknowledged, but not obeyed at once. This practice teaches freedom. The bell is not a master. It is a reminder. In modern terms, this might look like turning off alerts or pausing before answering. Isn't it curious how power shifts when you realize you do not have to leap every time the bell rings? Imagine your phone as a modern hand. Each buzz is sound in the courtyard. You can bow to it, acknowledge, but you need not sprint. You can breathe, finish your task, then respond when it is true for you. The circle of your boundary grows clearer. Picture now your evening routine. Instead of clutching your phone until sleep, you set it aside, perhaps on a shelf across the room. You silence the alerts, letting the device rest as you do. The air grows calmer. Your body softens. The lantern at the threshold glows, not competing with the digital light, but reminding you of a different rhythm. Slower, steadier, kinder. Reflect for a moment. What would change if your phone's notifications became like temple bells, structured, limited, respectful, rather than random commands? Could your energy breathe again? Could compassion flow without collapse? Zen teachers sometimes pose simple but piercing questions. One might ask, if every bell is answered, when will you ever sit? The question echoes through the night, hinting at the cost of constant reaction. Without silence, compassion loses its root. Without boundaries, kindness turns thin. Listen to the sounds around you now. The hum of electricity, the faint creak of walls, the whisper of your own breath. These are your true bells tonight. They do not demand, they only remind. Notice how peaceful it feels when sound does not carry urgency. The lantern flickers once, then steadies again. Its flame is not shaken by silence. It glows more deeply because of it. In the same way, your life glows brighter when you allow moments of digital silence, when you set boundaries with screens so your spirit can rest. So tonight, choose one small ritual. Perhaps you silence your phone an hour before sleep. Perhaps you decide to check messages only at certain times. Perhaps you treat each buzz not as command, but as invitation. In these simple acts, you reclaim your breath, your presence, your peace. Boundaries in the digital age are not barriers to connection. They are the very means by which true connection can survive. For only when your cup is not overflowing with endless alerts can you pour tea with both hands, offering real attention to those you choose to meet. The lantern's glow still marks the threshold. The night hums gently. Your phone rests quietly nearby, no longer the master of your peace. And within this silence, your flame steadies, clear, compassionate, boundaried, alive. The lantern burns low, the oil nearly gone, yet its flame remains steady, small, golden, alive. The night has carried us through many teachings, from bowls and bells to oxen and tides. And now the story reaches its closing rhythm. Tonight's final image is of lying down like a lion, releasing unfinished requests, and letting sleep gather you as naturally as dusk gathers the sky. Imagine a lion reclining in tall grass at twilight. Its body is strong, but its posture is ease itself. The lion does not pace, worrying about whether the gazelles approve. It does not bow, hoping to please other animals. It lies down fully, breathing, present, untroubled. This image has often been used in Buddhist practice to describe a posture of trust, a way of letting the body rest in its true dignity. For the people pleaser, such rest feels radical. How often do you lie down with your mind still running, replaying conversations, measuring approval, tallying whether you did enough? Sleep comes slowly when the herd of should stampedes through the dark. But tonight, the lion teaches another way. You can lie down in completeness, even with tasks unfinished. The Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering. Clinging to praise, to reputation, to endless requests, all of these keep us restless. But to lie down like the lion is to release clinging, to trust that the world can spin a night without your constant effort. Isn't it curious how easily the body rests once the mind lets go? A Zen story tells of a monk who, after a long day of chores, collapsed onto his mat without finishing his assigned task. Another monk scolded him, "You left work undone." The tired monk replied, "Tomorrow is already waiting. Tonight I rest." The next morning, refreshed, he finished the chore easily. The lesson is clear. Boundaries include knowing when to stop. Some temples honor this truth with the evening drum. At sunset, a great drum is struck, its sound deep and resonant, echoing across the valley. The drum does not ask whether every request was answered or every task finished. It simply declares, the day is complete. What remains will wait for morning. Could you imagine your own life punctuated by such a drum, telling you, it is enough? Rest now? Picture yourself lying down tonight. The room is quiet. The lantern at the threshold glows its last. You feel the weight of the day, but instead of resisting, you let it slide from your shoulders like a heavy robe. You remember the ox you chased, the leaves you swept, the bowls you held, the ropes you guided. Each teaching now rests beside you, no longer demanding effort. They are companions, not burdens. Zen masters often ask questions that sound like riddles, but at night they become lullabies. One such question is, when the lantern goes out, where does the flame go? The question does not need an answer. It invites release, reminding you that endings are not failures, but natural shifts. The flame does not die. It transforms into warmth, into memory, into rest. Reflect once more. What requests are unfinished in your life? What conversations left you uneasy? What demands press at the edge of your mind? Imagine placing each one into a small boat on a river. Watch as the current carries them away under the moonlight. You do not destroy them. You simply let the river hold them until morning. Your breath slows, your body softens, and sleep gathers you like water gathering fallen leaves. The lantern's glow fades lower still, yet its warmth lingers. Compassion remains, but boundaries stand firm. You are not abandoning care. You are shaping it with wisdom. You are not rejecting love. You are protecting its root. To release people-pleasing is not to close your heart. It is to open it more deeply, honestly, sustainably. And so, like the lion in the grass, you may lie down tonight, strong in stillness, fearless in rest. The flame becomes smaller, the night grows fuller, and peace arrives. Not from effort, not from approval, but from letting go. The lantern at last grows quiet, the flame sinking into its final glow. Shadows soften, edges blur, and the night stretches like a great blanket across the sky. This is the time of settling, of allowing every teaching to dissolve into calm. You have walked with bulls and oxen, with ropes and circles, with sweeping leaves and guiding reins. Each image, each story, was a step back toward yourself. Now the path asks nothing more of you. Feel your breath slowing. Inhale gently. Exhale even more slowly, as if each out-breath is a stream carrying worries away. The world is quieter now. Whatever remains unfinished does not belong to this hour. The river holds it, the stars watch over it, and you are free to rest. In Zen, it is said that peace is not found by chasing. It arrives when chasing ends. Tonight, there is nothing to pursue, no one to please, no praise to earn. There is only this soft moment where the heart beats gently and the body welcomes stillness. Imagine lying beneath a wide night sky, stars drifting like lanterns above. Each star whispers the same truth. You are already whole. Compassion lives in you, steady as the earth itself. Boundaries keep that compassion alive, edges that protect the flame. You do not need to give yourself away to shine. As your eyelids grow heavy, let every teaching fade into silence. The lantern has done its work. The flame bows and becomes memory, leaving warmth behind. Sleep gathers around you like soft grass around the lion, like night air around the temple, like the hush that follows a bell. Peace is here, always waiting, already yours.